It is the John Phillips Show. Johnny's on jury duty today. Maybe he'll be back tomorrow. It's Randy Wang here. The phone number to join us is 800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and search for the John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. If you could subscribe to the show, it would be doing us a huge favor because then we could brag that, hey, look how big our numbers got. And also you get all the shows. You can download them. Listen to them on a hike. I did that today because I'm broadcasting live from Santa Fe, New Mexico. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Carol in Orange. Carol, hello.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Love your show. Well, you mentioned that when you're in your 70s, they don't get to call you for jury duty. I'm 76 years old, Randy, and I'm still getting summons to go for a jury duty. So it's not true that at your 70s they stop calling you. They still do.
Well, from what I have heard, and you may be totally correct, but from what I've heard, you can say no because you've served already your time.
That's what I'm doing. So even at the height of COVID, where age like me, I was 72 at the height of COVID, and they're saying, well, if you're senior, you're exempt. They called me. I got a summons. And, of course, I answered back and said I'm not in the best of health, being 72 at the time. And then last year, sometime in July, I got a summons to report for jury duty. So I went to my doctor and told my doctor, you have to give me an excuse letter to send to the court because I'm not in my best of health, and I cannot drive early in the morning like I used to do. So,
well, that's the thing. It's such a hassle for just a regular person
even if you're in 80s, I heard.
Well, hopefully they don't do that to you anymore because you should be exempt, especially if you got health problems. Thanks so much for the call, Carol. Appreciate it. But of course, all these systems are automated. There's nobody even checking what's going on there. Let's go to Jennifer in South Pasadena. Jennifer, hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, hi. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I just wanted to kind of shed a light a little bit on some of the draconian housing policies within California. Long-time resident of South Pasadena, and what they have done with regard to a builder's remedy project, which is, where the, essentially pro-development under the guise of it's pro-housing, pro-little guy. They've used that to essentially eminent domain, a hillside across the street from me, and do a split lot on that and build a fourplex in single-family zoning. So I just kind of wanted to, bring this up amongst your many listeners. The level of, authoritarianism in California is just far and wide and so much deeper than just the male and female sports. I mean, this housing thing took all of us by surprise.
Well, and Jennifer, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's something that doesn't get talked about enough. It's through legislation that Gavin Newsom has signed over the years. There really is no such thing anymore as local zoning because any single family lot can be rezoned into a twoplex, threeplex, or fourplex, whether you have the infrastructure to support it or not when it comes to roads and parking and sewer, let alone everything else. And if a city tries to stop a project, they can go to the state with the builder's remedy, like you said, or Gavin Newsom will sue you for being NIMBYs. And the thing is, even with all of these policies, California is still well short of all of its housing goals. So I don't know what exactly it is we're doing.
Well, and on top of that, I mean, we look at some of the data about, numbers of Californians leaving for, parts like Florida and Texas, et cetera. And, the level of, gamesmanship and the level of secrecy with my own city. I mean, it's essentially Pandora's box that I've opened when I start delving into how much the city has been in bed with this developer. Because we're talking about developing a lot where they're just going to clear cut about 25 oak trees that they say are protected in our city. So they're violating that, and they're going to clear cut this a hillside that is a 45-degree slope, and they say there's no CEQA, there's no level of, protection from an environmental standpoint. And we're all looking at this across the street going, I don't even know if this thing's going to not fall down upon us. They were very harsh with us over a decade ago when we wanted to add 700 square feet onto our house, and none of that applies anymore.
No, that's exactly what's going on now. CEQA only is for projects they don't want. If it's something they want, like quote unquote affordable housing, whatever that term actually means, they're going to fast track it just like they fast track the stadiums in Inglewood. It doesn't matter. Even if there is a legitimate concern for environmental review, like a 45-degree hillside with a bunch of oak trees, that doesn't matter anymore because it's all about building housing. And if you're connected to the cities with these developers, whether it's the completely legal way with campaign contributions or the completely illegal way with bribes like we've seen in the city of Los Angeles, we're seeing this all over the place. And most of the time, the housing that gets built is replacing existing housing. So we're not adding to the housing supply at the same time where there's abandoned buildings all over the place.
That's true. And in this case, their workaround, the carrot of the affordable housing is one 500 square foot attached ADU. That's why they're able to go ahead and destroy this hillside for 500 square foot. And when they basically are splitting this lot, they're doing it as an overlay. So they're calling it an overlay zone within single-family housing. And then we're trying to challenge it and say, well, that's an illegal spot zone. And they're like, no, because it's an overlay of single-family housing within single-family housing. And we're like, well, wait a minute. How is a split lot that's not allowed for any of the other 639 lots, of which I'm one of them, in this particular zone, you're allowing one split lot and calling it an overlay, and that's not a spot zone.
This is how California's housing policy works now. It hasn't actually solved the housing crisis. Every single bill that Gavin Newsom has passed and signed in 6 years of being governor has not reduced the price of housing, has not solved the crisis. In fact, the cost has only gone up, even with all of these giveaways to developers, even with getting rid of all kinds of local zoning where any lot can be split like this. It hasn't solved the problem.
100% true. And I just wanted to bring this attention to people like the builder's remedy ugliness, caller that was just on from La Cañada, where they're going to put, 80 units in there. And, La Cañada just finally, gave up on that battle. But it's really a shame. And I just wish that more people understood the depths of the backhandedness on this from the standpoint of, I really think it's something that people can use outside of California to sort of highlight why Gavin Newsom cannot be a presidential candidate. Because, to have basically done this to normal citizens, taxpayers, law-abiding people like my husband and myself, and basically say you have no rights, just strip your rights away. I sit process, but meanwhile, they made a backroom settlement with the developer to take the builder's remedy off the table, and that was this lot split. And then they came to us and said, "Oh, here's your due process. Speak at city council." But it was a done deal. So again, where was our due process? We had none.
No, the local residents are completely out of the equation. So if their local government wants to stand up, they get sued. That's what happened in the city of Norwalk. That's what happened in the city of Huntington Beach for many, many, many years. But Gavin Newsom is going to have a real hard time running for president because the outcomes of these policies have not been positive. This is a state with a Democrat supermajority. So if they really had all the great ideas, this place would be a utopia, and it is not by any means. Thanks so much for the call, Jennifer. Appreciate it. One example of exactly what she's talking about is what's been going on in San Diego for quite a few years now, where the city of San Diego passed this ADU bonus program where you could take any single family lot and you could build an ADU, which is great. But then they expanded it. Okay, you can build an ADU as tall as you want as long as half of it is, quote, affordable housing. And then in 2023, they extended it to say, as long as it's close to a bus stop, you don't need to build parking. And that's the part about this where you're going to lose the buy-in from neighborhoods. Everyone understands we need to build more. And you know what? I think ADUs are a wonderful idea because you can build them cheaply and some people have the room in their homes. But if you don't build the infrastructure around it, like paving a driveway for a car and dealing with the added sewer and all the other things and the extra traffic, you're just going to drive people crazy. So residents have been dealing with that for years and years and years, and they've been trying to fight back. Now the city council is considering reversing parts of the program because it has led to the complete change of neighborhoods. And just because you oppose that doesn't necessarily make you a NIMBY. We need to build, but do we need to build in this specific area? Because I got to tell you, you ever drive up and down the 5 freeway? There's a lot of open space in the state of California. There's a lot of open space in Los Angeles County. There's a lot of underutilized space. For instance, government buildings, but also there is so much retail with for lease signs where if we made it easier and more feasible to redevelop that land, put that into housing, have more of these multi-use things where you've got like a grocery store on the first floor and then it's apartments above that. But we also have to understand, and it's not a bad thing, it's okay if you don't want to live in an apartment and you don't want to live in a condo. It's okay to want a single family home. And the fact is, it's so expensive to live in California that we either build these luxury multi-unit developments that people don't want to be in. Look at the vacancy rates in places like downtown Los Angeles or in downtown San Francisco. And when we do build single family homes, because it's so expensive to build here, the only way they can make their money back is by building 2-story mega mansions. The simple starter home, the ones that, people used to be able to start their lives with, there's no incentive to build that. And because of that, if you happen to live in a 3 or 4 bedroom house in a small lot in a place like the San Fernando Valley, well, you're lucky if you own one because your property values keep going up because that kind of housing just gets more and more scarce because they're not building that kind of housing. They're building all the other kinds of housing that people necessarily don't want. Then you throw in all of the nonsense when it comes to all the housing we build for the homeless. And you got to wonder if this situation would be a little clearer and be a little easier if you got out of the way. Because other states aren't having these problems. Austin has had a huge reduction in not only homelessness, but in rental and in rent rates. And you know how? They just kept building what the people wanted. We're designated what people can build, and we're designating it in ways that upset the neighborhood, but also don't solve the problem. Let's go to Mary in Pacoima. Mary, hello.
Hi, Randy. I just have a comment that we are now life imitating art. We are idiocracy. If you've never seen the movie, go out and watch it. It is describing exactly what California is now. We have no common sense. We teach our children to the lowest ability of the child and the lowest ability of the teacher. Do crazy things like do ADUs, people go out and they start gouging people to live in these little tiny apartments that have no control. You don't have parking, you don't have schools, you don't have access. And we decide that, our government knows what's going on. We should live by what they say. So, yeah, that's my comment.
Unfortunately, I think what you're saying is very true to the point where I'm worried how many residents of California are now watering their plants with Gatorade.
Exactly.
Thanks for the call, Mary. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Johnny's on jury duty, so it's Randy Wang here. This is the John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. Johnny is on jury duty. If you'd like to email us, you could do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Penny writes in with some clarification about jury duty when it comes to you being over 70 years old. In California, there's no automatic age-based exemption from jury duty. However, if you're 70 years of age or older, you may request to be excused from jury service due to a medical condition without needing to provide a doctor's note. This policy is outlined in the California Rules of Court and is recognized by various county courts across the state. To request an excuse based on age and medical condition, you must inform the court in writing prior to the scheduled service date. Some courts also offer online submission options through their e-juror portals. It's important to check the specific procedures of the court that summoned you, as requirements can vary by county. If you're under 70, you may still be excused if you have a physical or mental impairment, but you'll need documentation such as a note from a healthcare provider. Wow, Penny, thank you so much. That was very informative. If you've ever missed an episode of this show, like for instance, we weren't live on Tuesday in the Bay Area because we were moving the server for KSFO. So if you missed yesterday's show, you can listen to all 3 hours of it before Johnny went to jury duty. And you can do that by searching for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, or Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can also do what George Gascon does to himself in the middle of the night.
Do a Google on YouTube.
Because every time I hit post on a podcast of The John Phillips Show, it goes to YouTube. So if you search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube, an app that you know I use for everything, every episode gets up there, and you can listen to them on there. You can save them on there. It's not video, but it's Johnny's picture, and you'll see little waveforms. But you know it's really fun? I love the way that YouTube categorizes the show, not only the John Phillips Show, but also my solo show on KABC in Los Angeles, the News Blitz with Randy Wang, because if I put in the title or the description the name of a certain politician, it shows up in the rankings. It shows up in the search results. So, for instance, if you search on YouTube for Ricardo Lara, and then you go by upload date, the most recent thing that you'll find is The John Phillips Show, Ricardo Lara wants his wig snatched.
And I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say.
If you search for Hugo Soto Martinez and you go by upload date, the second video is the KBC News Blitz. Hugo Soto Martinez can't take the heat at his own hall. So my goal is to have every politician that we talk about, the first thing that you see in the search results is one of our shows talking about that politician. So subscribe and listen to the podcast. We would really, really, really appreciate it. Because if you don't listen to our show, you're going to have to listen to some of the other dreck that's out there, like Gavin Newsom's podcast or Pamela Price's podcast.
She called me a crime boss.
And while that clip is very funny, the majority of her show is boring as hell.
Fear, doom, and gloom.
Hey, it's Woo Wednesday, and we got a half hour to go on The John Phillips Show. It's the John Phillips Show. It's Randy Wang here. Johnny's on jury duty. If you'd like to email us, you could do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Christopher writes in and says, hey, Randy, I actually don't mind serving jury duty, and I own a home in Contra Costa County. I've been employed with the same company for 29 years in California, and besides my military career, I've resided in 2 counties. I've served on standby jury once, and I have been summoned for jury duty in 11 years. Don't ask me why or how, but this is a fact. So there must be a way that someone can avoid it, whatever that is. That's what I've always found fascinating about it, especially in California where all this stuff is automated and it's kind of a slipshod mess. There are so many people that would love to spend their time serving on juries, even people that are over 70, if they're retired, that would love to do it. Especially, you know, if you really kind of marketed it towards the people who are into all the true crime shows and, hey, you can be a part of history. Of course, you'll probably just be on some random DUI case, or you'd be on the case that Johnny was on last year that still traumatizes him to this day. But I feel like if there was a way to market it to all the people that would love to do it, that would love to spend their time doing that, you could fill up the juries. We could speed up the trials. But It seems to be the people who want to do it never get the summons, and the people who, have a job that's really, really, really difficult to get out of, they're the ones that have to be summoned for it. But hey, it is what it is. Let's go to Paul in San Francisco. Paul, hello.
Hello, Randy. I want to talk about these housing mandates in Sacramento. Sacramento is requiring local cities and municipalities to build more houses, even though we already have more houses than any other state in the country, supposedly because there's a housing shortage. But what's amazing to me is the Californians put up with this because a lot of local communities don't want to build more houses. And yet we're allowing Sacramento politicians to put guns in our heads and make us do this. They're supposed to work for us, not the other way around. But the biggest, most mysterious part about it all, what about the water? We don't have enough water for the houses that are already here in California. If you don't believe me, wait till the next drought. You get scolded if you use too much water. There are water surcharges. Apparently nobody in Sacramento thought about that. So you have to wonder, what are these people thinking? All I can think, it's just a theory, it's the usual suspects. It's the building industry is pushing all this stuff. I mean, what better business model can you get than getting the government to force people to buy your goods and services?
Well, and not only that, but in the name of affordable housing, a lot of government money goes towards subsidizing a lot of these projects. It's funny you bring up the housing mandates because I don't think enough people know this. Every single county in California is under these housing mandates, except the county that Gavin Newsom lives in. Marin County is exempt. Don't tell me why. I have no idea.
I don't know either. But, yeah, you talk about these affordable – that's a whole nother subject. But these affordable housing schemes, it's just window dressing. I mean, they literally, they have lotteries to determine who gets to move into these artificially cheap places. And if you win the lottery, then, you get artificially cheap housing. The people who lose the lottery, not only do they get nothing, but they're forced to subsidize the winners, the few winners.
And it's like rent control on a massive scale. You're right. If you're lucky enough to get picked for the affordable housing unit in the building that has 10, 20 condos that are luxury, well, then you're doing great. But meanwhile, all the stuff that we are building, there's tons of vacancies out there, to your point, and we're not building what people actually want, which means that we're not lowering the cost of owning a home or renting an apartment. All of these policies, rents have only gone up in other places where you just build what people want and if you build more market rate housing, it'll lower the cost of market rate. But when every project is deemed an affordable housing this or a homeless room key project this, you see what happens, and the prices just keep going up. And the affordability crisis has not been solved one bit by Gavin Newsom or the supermajority in Sacramento.
Yeah, these people do not believe in free market economics. That has been given up on long ago. And I think, the problem is most citizens don't understand free market economics and why it works. It's because you're held accountable. Everybody's held accountable. Government is not held accountable.
I point to this year, the city of Austin, they're seeing a double-digit reduction in rental costs. And it's simply because they built enough of the housing people wanted. And they didn't build affordable housing lotteries and all this other nonsense that really isn't solving the problem.
No, it's like I said, it's just window dressing. It's politicians. Oh, we got to do something because there's this, idea that we don't have enough affordable housing. Look, California is a very desirable place to live. Not everybody in the world who wants to live here can, but nobody will acknowledge that.
Well, in the name of equity, that's why Gavin Newsom wants to force places like Huntington Beach to build a bunch of, low rent, affordable housing, slums pretty much. That's equity. Everyone at every income level should be able to live by the beach. That's equity in California.
Right. Yeah, and if you don't have a job, if you don't have any money, you have a right to live in the most expensive city in probably the nation, San Francisco. You have a right to do that. It makes no sense. It's just crazy.
It is funny, right? You could work your butt off your entire life and not be able to afford to live in San Francisco, one of the most beautiful cities in the entire country, with such incredible resources and great parks and incredible restaurants. But you could also have zero income, be a drug addict in the Tenderloin, and they're giving you a hotel room as long as you want it for.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. The homeless thing, we can talk about that all day long. But again, if you don't have any money, you don't have any job, maybe you should be living in Fresno or Reno or somewhere else. But no, the people of San Francisco think you have, and everybody has a right to live there. It's completely nonsensical.
Well, and there's so many people that they can't afford to live in a place like San Francisco or Los Angeles, but they are someone that can work and they want to provide for a family. And so that's what they do. They move somewhere that's cheaper, whether it's in the Central Valley or it's in a neighboring state. We have people calling in who still listen to these radio stations, but they move to Arizona for the cost of living because that's how it works. This idea of equity where everyone at every income level should be able to live in a place that's incredibly expensive ends up making it more expensive for everybody. Yeah,
it sounds, listening to you and I, it kind of sounds like we make sense, and yet no politician is going to say these things. And I think, unfortunately, most Californians just, you say these things to them and they look at you with a blank stare like a deer caught in headlights, and it's like, it's just so common sense to me.
Well, and that's what we need. We got another election coming up in just about a year, and we need common sense people to be put in office. I give San Francisco a lot of applause. Daniel Lurie sounds like a common sense guy. Matt Mahan in San Jose sounds like a common sense guy. Oakland voted for Barbara Lee, so I don't know what to tell you about that.
Yeah, Barbara Lee. Well, she followed in the footsteps of Dellums. Same role in Congress, and then became the mayor of Oakland. But you know what? Ron Dellums, when he was the mayor of Oakland, I never sensed that he wanted to do that job at all. I think he was put there by the special interests who supported him the whole time in Washington, and they told him after he retired, now you're going to be mayor of Oakland and do our bidding here. And I suspect the same thing happened with, what's her name? Lee.
Well, with Barbara Lee. And to that point, and she is following in the footsteps of Ron Dellums, because you can be a longtime member of Congress and people will know your name, but you don't really get held accountable for anything if you live in a safe district. When you're the mayor, you're held accountable for everything. And if things get worse than when it was under Sheng Tao or stay the same, they're going to be wanting to recall her.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because she is very loved, in the trifecta of liberalism in the Bay Area, and particularly in Oakland. And Oakland's got, as we know, big problems. So it's going to be fascinating to watch and see what happens with Lee in there.
Hey, Paul, it's been wonderful talking to you, buddy. Call us back anytime. You're the best.
Thanks.
We have the smartest listeners in the state of California, Northern California and Southern California. And we love talking to you, and we love taking your phone calls. Let's go to David in Fairfax. David, hello.
Hello.
Howdy.
Hey, I wanted to make the comment that, Fairfax is a very small town in Marin County, California, and we are by no means exempt to this housing mandate. In fact, they're trying to force a multi-story, multiple hundred-unit building into our town, which is completely out of character, is not supported by infrastructure such as you mentioned before, including the fact that we don't even have a ladder truck in our town. But the Democratic Socialists have taken over our city government and are forcing it down our throat, complying with this mandate. And perhaps Gavin's town of Kentfield is exempt, but Marin is not exempt, and there's a lot of battles happening right now. And just so everyone knows, Marin is not simply liberal. There's plenty of conservative thinking people here. In fact, we have a recall election going up against our Democratic Socialist town council to try and fight things like this, which, is going to end up costing us. Like, for example, who's going to pay for the ladder truck that's required to support a 4-story building that they want to put in that no one in this town wants except the town council?
Well, and that's what we're having now. It's zoning top down, not bottom up. There's no local input, and that means there's no discussions about how these cities were built to begin with when it comes to infrastructure and roads and parking and sewer and power. Transmission lines. We don't think about any of this stuff. We just say build more housing and don't worry about everything else that comes with it.
Well, including the taxes they're going to start hitting us with once they realize they can't pay for it. Right?
Well, there definitely is that. Well, David, thank you so much for the call, and thanks for updating us on what's going on in Marin County and in Fairfax. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Love you. We love being on in the Bay. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Gavin Newsom's housing policy. It's been 6 years of passing dozens of CEQA reforms and cutting red tape and putting down these housing mandates, and it has not lowered the cost of housing. It has only gone up, and in some cases, it has gone up exponentially. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. This is The John Phillips Show. It's The John Phillips Show. It's Randy Wang here. Johnny's on jury duty, and we're taking your phone calls at 800-222-5222. Let's go to Doug in Fairfax. Doug, hello.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon. How you doing? I wanted to add on to what David said, so I completely agree with what he said. Two things. One, the building is 6 stories with events on the 7th on the top floor. Secondly, we don't have the route to escape. If a fire came from San Geronimo Valley, the only way out is the hub in San Anselmo, which already has 40,000 cars a day going through it. So this is suicide. And there's only really a limit to what we can do, and that is the following. We need to work with other towns and cities across the state that don't want this mandate. We need to put pressure on our local assembly and Senate candidates to ensure that they change what they're doing and work for us. So, yes, I wrote a Marin Voice about the fire truck. We don't have a fire truck. We don't have the 4 firefighters to attend it, and we wouldn't have anywhere to put it if we did have one. So this is insane. In addition to this 7-story monstrosity, they have plans for 5 more in our town. It's just a mess. So we've got to work with other towns, we've got to work with other cities, and we have to, especially if we can get the recall going, we can get people on board who believe in serving the community, not serving some other outside influences.
Well, that's what we need. I mean, you look at there's been no lessons learned from what happened in Paradise, where people trying to escape because there was one road out of town got burned alive. And we don't want to build any of the infrastructure, just jam the housing down your throats, and you're just going to have to sit there. It isn't working, and it isn't making it cheaper to live here.
That's right. And I serve I'm elected to the local sanitary board. We don't have the infrastructure for this. It's not. People are complaining that we've fought for years to not have a lot of growth. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a small town. We'd like it to be. If we wanted to live in the city, we'd live in the city. We moved to the suburbs because we want to live in the suburbs. And the DSA is trying to turn the suburbs into small cities. It's going to lower house values, and for the DSA, that's not a bug. It's a feature.
Oh, of course. That's equity right there. No one should be having a single family home. No one should own a home. We should all rent studio apartments and like it. Doug, thank you so much for calling. Appreciate it. By the way, you could hear the birds chirping in the background. It must be beautiful in Fairfax today. Let's go to Helen in Newark. Helen, hello.
Hello, and thank you. I was born and raised in San Francisco in housing projects. I now lived in the East Bay for many years. And I've been upset that I think my county, Alameda County, is turning into one giant housing project. However, just continuing my education by listening and reading programs such as yours, it seems like that's the state cabal of gangsters. That's their plan for the whole California. They're going to stick these stack and pack tenements, proposed slums in the middle of our communities. It's really frightening.
It is, and the only way we stop it is by electing different people, not just in the legislature, but we have to really pay attention to who we're putting in the governor next year, because Gavin Newsom, this is his number one issue, and he's been a disaster on it.
Well, what do we do with this? It's like all Democrats. It's just gonna. How are we the people get? I'm just kind of speechless, but it's overwhelming. We can get rid of him, but it's all a state of. They're like all in cahoots, a big organized crime.
Well, there are definitely people who are connected to some really shady things. And then there are people who the ideology makes no sense, like the DSA that we just heard about. But there are moderates out there. And I think reaching out to the moderates, elevating the moderates, even though he's listed as a Democrat, Matt Mahan is a really common sense guy in San Jose. And Daniel Lurie looks like he's doing some great things starting off in San Francisco. And even though they're Democrats, they are so far to the right of what is now the mainstream in California that if we start looking at more moderates in all different kinds of positions, we can definitely start righting the ship here in the state of California.
Well, thank you. And your airtime and thoughts are just invaluable. Thank you. Keep it up.
Well, we're so glad to have you listening in beautiful Newark. Thanks so much for the call, Helen. Appreciate it. We're getting a lot of great calls from a lot of different regions in Northern California today, but we love all of our calls from Northern California and Southern California. Johnny will hopefully be back tomorrow. Haven't gotten the text yet that he's been picked for a trial, so maybe he'll be dismissed. But either way, we're going to be here covering everything that matters up and down the state of California, as we do every single day from noon to 3. If you miss an episode of the show, search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, and search for it on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and like every episode because it does wonders for us. We'd appreciate it. This is The John Phillips Show.